after I wasn't in any hurry to get started because maybe somebody will show up and we'll be done in plenty of time today. But before we get started, this young man right here just had a year. Kiefer.
How did you do that?
Kiefer.
You serious? No. This meeting, huh? No, coming to meetings and getting more involved with Big Buck and with people and just, knowing where I belong.
Yep.
Just here in the A.
Good for you.
He's been showing up pretty regular for the step study. He's trying to learn a little bit, and that's good.
It is great.
We just keep doing that.
Proud of you.
Rest of our lives, we just keep learning a little bit. Okay, we're gonna do step 10 today, but before we get all heavily involved in that, does anyone have a question about what we've covered up to now? We know where the answer to the riddle is, right? The riddle that's on page 22. Says, why can't we stay on the water wagon? Why do we go back drinking?
Yeah.
We can't answer the riddle, yeah, but we can. We can answer it on page 32 in the 12 and 12 because it says that the answer to the riddle is the quality of our faith. Yeah, go ahead and read that. Somebody's got it. Rod, go ahead.
Okay. It says down here. Should I read the whole big paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay. To clergymen, doctors, friends, and families, the alcoholic who means well and tries hard is a heartbreaking riddle. To most AAs, he is not. There are too many of us who have been just like him and have found the riddle's answer. This answer has to do with the quality of faith rather than its quantity. This has been a blind spot. We suppose we had humility when really we hadn't, and that's important too. We suppose we had been serious about religious practice when upon honest appraisal, we found that we've been only superficial. True. Or going to the other extreme, we had wallowed in emotionalism and had mistaken it for true religious feeling. Not necessarily religion. In both cases, we have been asking something for nothing. The fact was we really hadn't cleaned house so that the grace of God, or understands that God, could enter us and expel the obsession. In no deep or meaningful sense had we ever taken stock of ourselves, made amends to those who we had harmed, or freely given to any other human being without any demand for reward. We had not even prayed rightly. We had always said, grant me my wishes instead of thy will be done.
Okay, so that's pretty early on in the 12 and 12, and it answers the question in the big book that's pretty early on. So what it's trying to tell us is that the quality of our faith, and the more faith that we can have, the better we will be, and the further we will get away from our old selves, okay? So that's what we're doing when we work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We get rid of some of that garbage that was holding us down, like you just read, and we make amends to other people, and we get on with life. And when we get into step 10 and 11, we're really going to get into the seriousness of the program as we travel down this path. Okay, we're going to find out some answers to some of those things that we may not have the answers to yet. Okay, what it says right before we get to step 10, we have the promises, okay? And we read those, they read them every night at 5:15 at the end of the meeting. The promises are at the end of step 9, probably for a reason, or we wouldn't have put them there. That's assuming we worked the first 9 steps, okay? And that we've gotten better, and we're doing right things. Because it talks about doing right things in the big book in a couple of places. Talks about it on page 70. If you want to go to page 70, we'll just touch on a couple of these things. Page 70 is right after we have been told that we're supposed to come up with sane and sound ideals on how we want to live, which is our searching and fearless moral inventory, that the book really doesn't talk about in so many words, but that's step 4. Okay, up to this point, 69 and 70, what it's been talking to us about in step 4 was get rid of all of our garbage. Do those 3 columns, write down all the stuff that, you know, and that's what we did. We unloaded that crap off of our back, and we did that in the 5th step. When we get to 69 and 70, and it says, now we're gonna set up a sane and sound ideal, then it's talking about a searching and fearless moral inventory. And what it says on page 70, as it says, suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Are we going to get drunk? It's only a half truth. It depends on us and on our motives. So what the book's trying to tell us is our motives are supposed to change from bad motives to good motives. And if I can do that and try to live like I think my higher power wants me to live, I'll probably be okay. But it also says, if we do something stupid, like we used to do, and if we're sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we're forgiven and learned our lesson. And that's why we have a higher power. And I'm really sorry for what I did, and I'm going to really try not to do it again. God will forgive us. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We're not theorizing, they're facts out of our experience. So it tells us right there, if I have a searching and fearless moral inventory, I'm going to have to try and live that way. And in the process, I've got to get rid of my character defects. Well, it's pretty hard to get rid of character defects because I handed out a list of them that's got about 35 of them on there, you know, and I can go to a psychiatrist and I can sit down and try and work on each one of those, but all I'm going to do is get confused trying to do that whole process. So what I found out is it's just easier to do a list of do's and don'ts. And that can be as big a list as I want it to be. And I put on the do list how I want to act from now on and what I want to be like. And I put on the don't list a lot of those stupid things I used to do that I don't want to do anymore. And that's what it's talking about. If I have them on my list and I screw up and I'm sorry, God will forgive me. Because I'm really trying not to do that stuff anymore, okay? And then, the next paragraph says, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and the strength to do the right thing. And that's the first place in the book where it says, do the right thing. The next place it says that, I'll tell you the page number in a little bit, okay? And then if we what, I'm looking for something here.
Yeah, where's that right thing? Where?
It says to do the right thing. It's in the middle of the page on 70.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There it is, yeah, I got it. Underlined it twice.
There was also a page 70.
Okay, and that pretty well sets up our searching and fearless moral inventory if we go through that process. And I think it's as important to do that process with our sponsor as it is to go do my searching and fearful immoral inventory with somebody and get rid of my junk that I did in treatment or after I got out of treatment or when I got into AA. It's equally as important to do the searching and fearless moral inventory. So somebody knows what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to change, okay? And then if we go to step 6 and 7 in the 12 and 12, and we go to the last page of step 6, if you remember, step 6 is, it's where we're going to separate the boys from the men. And when I do the step study with the ladies, I said it's going to separate the girls from the ladies. In other words, it's telling us we're going to grow up. And what it says on page 68 in my little book, it says, bottom of that first paragraph, so the difference between the boys and the men is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective and the perfect objective which is of God. So that's the path I'm on. I'm trying to get out of my selfish, self-centered ideas and ways, and I'm trying to head down the path where I think my higher power wants me to go. I hate doing biblical stuff, but I've read the Bible a couple times. One time when I was drunk, it didn't make much sense. The Bible says, narrow is the gate and straight is the way. And what it's saying is, doing the right thing under all conditions, the gate's really narrow and it's hard to get through because I want to not do those. I want to do the easy thing. And straight is the way. That means I've got an idea up here of how I want to be, and I have to walk that path. And I can't get off of it. Okay? So it says the same thing as this little book. And that's not surprising because when they started AA, when they started the Oxford group and AA, they were using the Bible because they didn't have this book. So they read out of the chapter of James. Mm-hmm. And that's where the faith without works is dead comes from. Okay? And that's why they say the Lord's Prayer in all those early meetings, and it says that in the books. Okay. So, let's go to the end of step 7. The last page is step 7. The second paragraph, about 3 lines from the bottom of it, it says, therefore, no peace was to be had until we could find a means of reducing these demands. And the difference between a demand and a simple request is plain to anyone. So, we're going to make a simple request of our higher power. And the 7th step is where we make the change in our attitude, which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves toward others and towards God. It says exactly the same thing as it said in step 6, only different words, okay? Yeah. I'm going to try and move out of self, and I'm going to try and help other people, and head down the road that God wants me to be on. And that's what it's talking about when it solves the riddle and says the quality of our faith. Okay? The more we work on all these things, the better our faith gets, and the stronger our faith gets, and the closer we get to that higher power connection, and the better we get, and the better we act, the more people like us, because we're not pissing everybody off. And I just try to head down that path one day at a time. Okay? So, having said that, I love the 24-hour book because they made me use the damn thing all the time when I got sober. So, I'm going to read some meditations here. So, this is what we're trying to do. I will try to keep my life calm and unruffled. This is my great task. To find peace and acquire serenity, I must not harbor disturbing thoughts. No matter what fears, worries, or resentments I have, I must try to think of constructive things until calmness comes. Only when I'm calm can I act as a channel for God's Spirit. And we're going to find out all about that channel when we do step 11 next week, because that comes from the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Okay? Okay. Have I got this one marked? Yes, I do. I'm going to July 23rd. The inward peace that comes from trust in God truly passes all understanding. That peace no one can take from you. No person has the power to disturb that inner peace, but you must be careful not to let in the world's worries and distractions. You must try not to give entrance to fears and despondency. You must refuse to open the door to the distractions that disturb your inner peace. Make it a point to allow nothing today to disturb your inner peace and your heart calm. And that's when we get into step 10, it's going to tell us about all those kind of things in step 11, okay?
Thanks, Andy.
The next one is September the 4th. Do not become encumbered by petty annoyances. Never respond to emotional upsets by emotional upsets. Try to keep calm in all circumstances. Try not to fight back. Call on the grace of God to calm you when you feel like retaliating. Look to God for the inner strength to drop these resentments that drag you down. If you are burdened by annoyances, you will lose your inner peace and the Spirit of God will be shut out. Try to keep peace within, okay?
What was that first reading that you read in that?
126, January 26. There's a lot of them in here.
Yes,
I just
just
picked
like
these,
it.
July 23rd and September 4th. I just picked those.
Mm-hmm.
And where does it say that in the big book, that same thing? On page 66, okay? We're just doing a little reviewing here. On page 66, it says, and we can all understand this one, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. In other words, to give away that inner peace, okay? To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? What'd that just say? It said I might be able to do some productive work, and I might actually be able to help somebody. But as long as I'm hung up on anger and resentments, jealousy, envy, sloth, all those things, or one of them, I shut myself off from personal relations. I shut myself off from my higher power because that's all I'm thinking about, okay? But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business resentment is infinitely grave. So it just told us what our job is. My job is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. It goes right back to that solving the riddle. The quality of my faith. Okay? There's never any question or anything that disagrees with itself in these books. It all heads us in the same direction. And then what it says, for when harboring such feelings, anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, sloth, whatever, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. Okay? Step 3 in the 12 and 12 talks about willingness. And if we're willing, we can open the door and let the light come in. And it's talking about letting God come into our life. And what the big book says is, if I have those feelings, I shut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit. I just slam the door shut. Said, God, I don't want nothing to do with you today. I'm pissed off. And you know what? God will go work with somebody else. And he'll leave you alone. And that's why people go back drinking, and that's why they go blow their brains out and jump off cliffs and all that kind of stuff. They shut themselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. Okay? So that's what it's talking about. Okay. So, let's go to the big book and let's read step 10. Anybody know where that's at?
Right after the promises.
84.
Oh, my God, it must be on page 84.
Yes, sir.
So, we're gonna read this, so we can start. John, start us off and we'll come around the table to your right.
Okay. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thought to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code.
Were there some things in that paragraph that were familiar? When we read page 69 and 70 and it talked about setting up our sane and sound ideals, what did it say? Exactly the same thing, just in different words. Okay? So the books are moving us in the same direction all the way through.
And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. And we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. And it just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition.
So what did it just tell us? If I can keep in fit spiritual condition, if I can keep hooked up with that higher power, and I can try to get better each day, I'm gonna be okay. And then what it said in that whole paragraph, those are promises. If I can hook up with that higher power, and I can try to grow in understanding and effectiveness, which is what it said, he just read, or John just read, I will get these promises. Sanity will return. I won't be interested in liquor anymore. We react sanely and normally. We have a new attitude toward liquor without any effort. We're not fighting it. We're not avoiding temptation. We've been placed in a position of neutrality. We've not even sworn off. The problem's been removed. I want those things. So what do I have to do to get them? I have to hook up that higher power and talk to it every day. Okay? Next paragraph, somebody.
It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will.
Okay, what did that paragraph say? Says I can't rest on my laurels, which means I have to work my ass off every day. Alcohol is a subtle foe. What we really have, the daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. So I have to work on that every day. And then what it says is, since some people say there's no musts in the big book, every day is the day when we must carry the vision of God's will into our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. And then the beautiful part is, we can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It's the proper use of the will. So, nobody's telling us that we can't think for ourselves and we can't do right things. I just have to use my willpower to head down that path instead of where my willpower always took me down the wrong path. That's the tough part. I have to use that willpower to do right things. Okay? And what it says is, how can I serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. If you go to the third step prayer, where's that, on page 63 or somewhere in there?
Yes, sir.
It says, God, I offer myself to thee, build with me and do as thy will. May I do thy way always. It says the same thing, doesn't it? So if I do the third step prayer on a daily basis, I'm doing exactly what it says I'm supposed to do in step 10. Okay? Okay, go ahead and read the next one.
Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action.
Yeah, Jesus. I busted my ass to get through 10 steps, and then what it says I gotta do? Action and more action. I can't stop. I can't rest on my laurels.
These guys never do.
Okay, and then it said, we've received strength, inspiration, and direction from Him. If we have carefully followed directions. Where do the directions start?
Page 58.
How do we know that? You be quiet. How do we know where the directions start?
Yeah, how it works.
It was like page 12 or something.
How about page 29?
Yes, further on.
Okay,
Big book?
Further
the
on.
big book, yeah, we're in the big book.
Okay. More about alcohol.
Further on.
First
There's a
paragraph.
solution?
Page 28, in the bottom of the page, in the
Okay.
following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism. That's the chapter more about alcoholism. Then a chapter addressed to the agnostics, which goes from page 44 to 57. And then it says, top of page 29, further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. So the directions that it just talked about on page 85 started on page 58. What it's trying to tell us is that if I can hook up with that higher power like it tries to get me to do on page 61, and I can work this program from page 58 to page 85, steps 3 through 10, I'll probably get some idea what the hell I'm doing. Okay? And if I can follow directions, here's some more promises. We have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. My God's become my friend. I carry that God with me everywhere I go. I can say a prayer anytime I want in the daytime, and I know God's listening. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Okay? I like those things. I want those things. I want that sixth sense. So if I go somewhere and I'm uncomfortable, I can leave. I don't have to stay there like I used to. Because I know if I stay, I'll probably do the wrong thing. Okay? I want those things. I want that vital sixth sense. I want God to be my friend. I want Him to be right beside me to keep me from doing wrong things. Okay? You get something out of all that?
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just reading the book. There's a lot of
Exactly.
stuff in there. Okay? Okay, so that's what the big book says. So let's go do the 12 and 12. We'll do step 10, okay?
Okay.
And it's Rod's turn. By the way, this is Rod, guys. He's sitting in on with it.
Rod?
He's been sober 30-some years and he's learning the program.
Yep, still working it. Step 10, is that where you want to
Yes,
go?
ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay, we're starting on page 88 and 12 by 12. And the step 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. As we work the first 9 steps, we prepare ourselves for the adventure of a new life. But when we approach step 10, we commence to put our AA way of living to practical use day by day in fair weather or foul, bad. Then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober, keep in an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions?
Okay, the acid test. Where did we hear that before?
Page 37.
Page 37. Right?
That's what I got notes.
That's right.
In the big book?
Tom's paying attention.
No,
Page
in the
37 and the
12.
12 and 12.
Oh, okay.
So let's go
Go back.
to 37 and see what the hell it's talking about.
It still has to meet the acid test.
Go ahead and read that paragraph, Tom.
This brave philosophy wherein each man plays God sounds good in the speaking, but it still has to meet the acid test. How well does it actually work? One good look in the mirror ought to be answer enough for any alcoholic.
Read that whole paragraph.
On down, you mean?
No, but from the moment up the top.
But from the moment our mental and emotional independence is in question, how differently we behave, how persistently we claim the right to decide all by ourselves just what we shall think and just how we shall act. Oh yes, we'll weigh the pros and cons of every problem. We'll listen politely to those who would advise us, but not all the decisions are to be ours alone. Nobody is going to meddle with our personal independence in such matters. Besides, we think there is no one we can surely trust. We are certain that our intelligence, backed by willpower, can rightly control our inner lives and guarantee us success in the world we live in. This brave philosophy, wherein each man plays God, sounds good in the speaking, but it still has to meet the acid test. How well does it actually work? One good look in the mirror ought to be answer enough for any alcoholic.
Okay, it introduced us to the acid test in step 3. And it said, as long as I want to be in control, as long as I want to do things my way, I can't meet the acid test. but it doesn't tell us what it is. So, back to step 10. What the acid test is a severe or decisive test. It is the test. And the acid test is, can we stay sober? Sure, no problem. Can we keep an emotional balance? Well, that's a little harder to do. Sometimes I get really screwed up. And can I live to good purpose under all conditions? Whoa, that's what it was talking about in those 24-hour readings. Can I stay unruffled? Can I keep calm? Can I keep my inner peace in all situations? And if we go to page 47 in this little book, it says, we thought conditions drove us to drink. These two paragraphs I told you to mark when we were reading them. Conditions drove us to drink, and when we tried to correct these conditions and found that we couldn't to our entire satisfaction, our drinking went out of hand, we became alcoholics. It never occurred to us that we needed to change ourselves to meet conditions, whatever they were. But in AA, we slowly learned that something had to be done about our vengeful resentments, self-pity, and unwarranted pride. We had to see that every time we played the big shot, we turned people against us. We had to see that when we harbored grudges and planned revenge for such defeats, we were really beating ourselves with the club of anger we'd intended to use on others. We learned that if we were seriously disturbed, our first need was to quiet the disturbance regardless of who or what we thought caused it. And that's exactly what it's telling us in step 10. Can I live to good purpose under all conditions? Okay? And then if I go to page 70 in this little book, the first page of step 7 in my book, it says, indeed, second paragraph, indeed the attainment of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of AA's 12 steps. Without some degree of humility, no alcoholic can stay sober at all. Nearly all AAs have found too, that unless they develop much more of this precious quality, humility, than may be required just for sobriety, they still haven't much chance of becoming truly happy. Without it, they cannot live to much useful purpose or in adversity be able to summon the faith that can meet any emergency. What did that just say? They cannot live to much useful purpose. So go to step 10 and read the last part of the acid test. Once I get my program down, and once I get hooked up with that higher power, I should be able to live to good purpose under all conditions. And it just told us in step 7 that in order to do that, I'm going to have to get really humble, have a lot of humility, and talk to that higher power and do what it says. And I don't always know what that is, but I go to meetings and I hear people say things, and oh yeah, that's the answer to my problem. Or they did what I didn't want to do, and it screwed them up, so now I know I shouldn't do that, okay? God talks to us through other people and our sponsors. Okay, then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober, keep an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions? In step 11, when we get there, it's going to teach us how to keep an emotional balance. Okay, Fred.
A continuous look at our assets and liabilities and a real desire to learn and grow by this means are necessities for us. We alcoholics have learned this the hard way. More experienced people, of course, in all times and places have practiced unsparing self-survey and criticism. For the wise have always known that no one can make much of his life until self-searching becomes a regular habit, until he is able to admit and accept what he finds and until he patiently and persistently tries to correct what is wrong.
Talks about self-searching has to become a regular habit. I have to be able at the end of the day to say to myself, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? And then I have to correct those things that I think I did wrong. Might have to make amends, might have to put it on my don't list so I don't do it again. Okay? And talk to my higher power about it. That's what it's talking about. And if you remember when we did steps 8 and 7 and 8, it talked about going back through our lives and figuring out what the hell caused us to do whatever we did. Fancy the real, remember? We talked about putting stuff in our head that people told us when we were little that may not have been what they wanted us to put in our head. But it became part of me, and I acted bad. So now I have to correct those things. That's what it's all talking about. Okay, go ahead, John.
When a drunk has a terrific hangover because he drank heavily yesterday, he cannot live well today. But there is another kind of hangover which we all experience whether we are drinking or not. That is the emotional hangover, the direct result of yesterday's and sometimes today's excesses of negative emotion, anger, fear, jealousy, and the like. If we would live serenely today and tomorrow, we certainly need to eliminate these hangovers. This does not mean we need to wander morbidly around in the past. It requires an admission and correction of errors now. Our inventory enables us to settle with the past. When this is done, we are really able to leave it behind us. When our inventory is carefully taken and we have made peace with ourselves, the conviction follows that tomorrow's challenges can be met as they come.
Okay, that was good.
Although all inventories are alike in principle, the time factor does distinguish one from another.
It's gonna talk about 4 different kinds of inventory here. Go ahead.
There's the spot check inventory taken at any time of day. Whenever we find ourselves getting tangled up, there's the one we take at the day's end when we review the happenings of the hours just passed. Here we cast out the balance sheet, crediting ourselves with things well done and chalking up debts where due. And then there are those occasions when alone or in the company of a sponsor or spiritual advisor, we make a careful review of our progress since the last time. Many AAs go in for annual or semi-annual house cleanings. Many of us also like the experience of an occasional retreat from the outside world where we can quiet down for an undisturbed day or so of self-overhaul and meditation.
Okay, 4 different kinds of inventory we can take. So if you're wondering what you need to do, you can read that paragraph. Go ahead, Andy.
Aren't these practices joy killers as well as time consumers? Well, must AAs spend most of their waking hours drearily rehashing their sins of omission or commission? Well, hardly. The emphasis on inventory is heavy only because of a great many of us have never really acquired the habit of accurate self-appraisal. Once this healthy practice has become grooved, it will be so interesting and profitable that the time it takes won't be missed. For these minutes and sometimes hours spent in self-examination are bound to make all the other hours of the day better and happier. And at length our inventories become a regular part of everyday living rather than something unusual or set apart. Before we ask what a spot check inventory is, let's look at the kind of setting in which such an inventory can do its work.
It is a spiritual axiom that every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with us.
Stop right there. A spiritual axiom, the definition of it is it's a self-evident truth. Means we can't deny it. It's telling us that every time we're disturbed, it doesn't say usually, doesn't say part of the time, it says every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. If I'm disturbed, I'm no longer at peace of mind, I no longer have that inner peace, I no longer am hooked up with my higher power because all I can think about is what pissed me off. Okay, that's what it's talking about. Go ahead.
If somebody hurts us and we are sore, we are in the wrong also. But are there no exceptions to this rule? What about justifiable anger? If somebody cheats us, aren't we entitled to be mad? Can't we be properly angry with self-righteous folk? For us of AA, these are dangerous exceptions. We have found that justified anger ought to be left to those better qualified to handle it.
Oh, God, it says that same thing in the big book, doesn't it?
Few people have been more victimized by resentments than have we alcoholics. It mattered little whether our resentments were justified or not. A burst of temper could spoil a day, and a well-nourished grudge could make us miserably ineffective. Nor were we ever skillful in separating justified from unjustified anger. As we saw it, our wrath was always justified. Anger, that occasional luxury of more balanced people, could keep us on an emotional jag indefinitely. These emotional dry benders often led straight to the bottle. Other kinds of disturbances, jealousy, envy, self-pity, or hurt, pride, did the same thing.
Okay, what did it say about anger and resentments in the big book on page 66?
Can't afford them.
If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. It says exactly the same thing in the big book as we just read. Go ahead.
Okay, is it a few people? No, that's. A spot check inventory taken in the midst of such disturbances can be a very great help in quieting stormy emotions. Today's spot check finds its chief application to situations which arise in each day's march. The consideration of long-standing difficulties had better be postponed, when possible, to times deliberately set aside for that purpose. The quick inventory is aimed at our daily ups and downs, especially those where people or new events throw us off balance and tempt us to make mistakes.
Yeah, go ahead.
In all these situations, we need self-restraint, honest analysis of what is involved, a willingness to admit when the fault is ours, an equal willingness to forgive when the fault is elsewhere. We need not be discouraged when we fall into the error of our old ways, for these disciplines are not easy. We shall look for progress, not for perfection.
Where we heard that before. The last paragraph on how it works, right?
No.
Right?
We're gonna seek progress, not perfection. We're not gonna be perfect. It says the same thing the big book says. And in that paragraph, there's 4 things. Okay? We need self-restraint, honest analysis of what's involved, a willingness to admit when the fault's ours, and an equal willingness to forgive when the fault's elsewhere. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. The books are full of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4s, okay? This next paragraph is really important. Is it my turn? Yeah.
It's always your turn. It's always your turn.
No. You just read, didn't you, Tom?
Who read last?
Huh?
I think I did.
Yeah, you.
Tom just read that. Okay. Here, important, our first objective will be the development of self-restraint. This carries a top priority rating. When we speak or act hastily or rashly, the ability to be fair-minded and tolerant evaporates on the spot. One unkind tirade or one willful snap judgment can ruin our relation with another person for a whole day or maybe a whole year. Nothing pays off like restraint of tongue and pen. We must avoid quick-tempered criticism and furious, power-driven argument. The same goes for sulking or silent scorn. These are emotional booby traps baited with pride and vengefulness. Our first job, is to sidestep the traps. When we are tempted by the bait, we should train ourselves to step back and think. For we can neither think nor act to good purpose until the habit of self-restraint has become automatic. And why is that important? What's the third part of the acid test? Read that, the first page of step 10.
And live to good purpose under all conditions.
Can we live to good purpose under all conditions, right? What did it just say? We can neither think nor act to good purpose until the habit of self-restraint has become automatic. So I need to work on that. And it said, nothing pays off like restraint of tongue and pen. If you remember when you were a little kid, your parents probably told you to count to 10 before you got all pissed off. That's what they were talking about. Restraint of tongue and pen. Think about it. We don't have to fly off the handle. That little card that I handed out said on it, being right isn't always a good thing. Or I don't have to tell you I'm right. I can just turn around and walk away. I think you're stupid, but I don't have to tell you that. And that's what it's talking about.
It doesn't.
We must avoid quick-tempered criticism and furious, power-driven argument. As soon as I do that, I just throw my peace and serenity out the window. It's gone. So that paragraph's really important, guys. Nothing pays off like restraint of tongue and pen. Our first objective will be the development of self-restraint. At the end, we can't think nor act to good purpose until the habit of self-restraint has become automatic. Now that may take years for that to happen, but we can work on it a day at a time, okay? Go.
Disagreeable or unexpected problems are not the only ones that call for self-control. We must be quite as careful when we begin to achieve some measure of importance in material success. For no people have ever loved personal triumphs more than we have loved them. We drank of success as of a wine which could never fail to make us feel elated. When temporary good fortune came our way, we indulged ourselves in fantasies of still greater victories over people and circumstances. Thus, blinded by prideful self-confidence, we were apt to play the big shot. Of course, people turned away from us, bored and hurt.
Now that we're in AA and sober, winning back the esteem of our friends and business associates, we find that we still need to exercise special vigilance. As an insurance against big shotism, we can often check ourselves by remembering that we are today sober only by the grace of God, and that any success we may be having is far more His success than ours.
Finally, we begin to see that all people, including ourselves, are to some extent emotionally ill. as well as frequently wrong. And then we approach true tolerance and see what real love for our fellows actually means. It will become more and more evident as we go forward that it is pointless to become angry or to get hurt by people who, like us, are suffering from the pains of growing up.
Oh, shit, you just told us what we've got. We got pains of trying to grow up. And what it said was, it's pointless to become angry, to be hurt by people who are like us, because they're suffering from the same things we're suffering for. Restrain your tongue and pen, self-restraint, okay, all those things. Go ahead.
Such a radical change in our outlook will take time, maybe a lot of time. Not many people can truthfully assert that they love everybody. Most of us must admit that we have loved but a few, that we have been quite indifferent to the many so long as none of them gave us trouble. And as for the reminder, well, we have really disliked or hated them. Although these attitudes are common enough, we find we need something much better in order to keep our balance. We can't stand it if we hate deeply. The idea that we can be possessively loving of the few, can ignore the many, and can continue to fear or hate anybody has to be abandoned, if only a little at a time.
I'm glad they put that in there, only a little at a time, so I don't have to get well overnight, okay? I just have to make progress, okay? And that paragraph before that paragraph said, when we approach true tolerance and see what real love for our fellows actually means. What's it say in the big book? Love and tolerance are our code. Same thing, okay? So these books never argue with each other. They're always pushing us in the same direction. Okay.
We can try to stop making unreasonable demands upon those we love. We can show kindness where we have shown none. With those we dislike, we can begin to practice justice and courtesy, perhaps going out of our way to understand and help them. Whenever we fail any of these people, we can promptly admit it, to ourselves always and to them also. When the omission would be helpful, courtesy, kindness, justice, and love are the keynotes by which we may come into harmony with practically anybody. When in doubt, we can always pause, saying, "Not my will, but thine be done." And we can often ask ourselves, am I doing to others as I would have them do to me today?
We hear that before, not my will, but thine be done. Third step prayer, right? Yeah. Okay, and the paragraph before that, we can try to stop making unreasonable demands upon those we love. If you go to page 76 in this little book, about the second paragraph down, last couple of lines, it says, therefore, no peace was to be had unless we could find a means of reducing these demands. No, I can't make demands of people. I have to try and get along. Okay?
When evening comes, perhaps just before going to sleep, many of us draw up a balance sheet for the day. This is a good place to remember that inventory taking is not always done and ready. It's a poor day indeed when we haven't done something right. As a matter of fact, the waking hours are usually well filled with things that are constructive. Good intentions, good thoughts, and good acts are there for us to see. Even when we have tried hard and failed, we may chalk that up as one of the greatest credits of all. Under these conditions, the pains of failure are converted into assets. Out of them, we receive the stimulation we need to go forward. Someone who knew what he was talking about once remarked that pain was the touchstone of all spiritual progress. How heartily we AAs can agree with him. For we know that the pains of drinking had to come before sobriety and emotional turmoil before serenity.
I have underlined, for we know that the pains of drinking had to come before sobriety and emotional turmoil before serenity. I have to get control of those emotions. And that's really hard to do. But we're gonna find out next week how we do that. Go ahead, Rob.
As we, excuse me, as we glance down the debit side of the day's ledger, we should carefully examine our motives in each thought or act that appears to be wrong. In most cases, our motives won't be hard to see and understand. When prideful, angry, jealous, anxious, or fearful, we acted accordingly, and that was that. Here we need only recognize that we did act or think badly, try to visualize how we might have done better, and resolve with God's help to carry these lessons over into tomorrow, making, of course, any amends still neglected.
Read another one.
But in other instances, only the closest scrutiny will reveal what our true motives were. There are cases where our ancient enemy, rationalization, has stepped in and has justified conduct which was really wrong. The temptation here is to imagine that we had good motives and reasons when we really didn't. Love that paragraph.
Yeah.
We constructively criticize someone who needed it when our real motive was to win a useless argument, or the person concerned was not being present. We thought we were helping others to understand him, when actually our true motive was to feel superior by pulling him down. We sometimes hurt those we love because they need to be taught a lesson, when we really want to punish. We were depressed and complained we felt bad, when in fact we were mainly asking for sympathy and attention. This odd trait of mind and emotion, this perverse wish to hide a bad motive underneath a good one, permeates human affairs from top to bottom. The stubble and elusive kinds of self-righteousness can underlie the smallest act or thought. Learning daily to spot, admit, and correct these flaws is the essence of character building and good living. An honest regret for harms done, a genuine gratitude for blessings received, and a willingness to try for better things tomorrow will be the permanent assets we shall seek. Having so considered our day, not omitting to take due note of things well done, and having searched our hearts with neither fear nor favor, we truly thank God for the blessings we have received and sleep in good conscience.
Okay, so that last paragraph there, we constructively criticize someone who needed it, really gives us some ideas about how we act, doesn't it? When we really shouldn't be doing that. And then it says, at the top of 95 in my book, it says, learning daily to spot, admit, and correct these flaws is the essence of character building and good living. And character building is all about what step 6 and 7 are about. Okay? An honest regret for harms done, make amends to people, a genuine gratitude for blessings received. We do that when we talk to our higher power at night and thank him for the day. And a willingness to try for better things tomorrow will be the permanent assets we shall seek. So I just keep making progress. Okay? And that's step 10. And next week we'll do step 11, and it's gonna show us how to do emotional sobriety, which is the middle part of the acid test, okay? So, thank you guys for being here. If you wanna throw a buck in, that'd be good. And you probably wanna go downstairs to the 5:15 meeting,
Yes.
because this meeting's over.
Okay.
But
Sounds like a plan. Can you point me in the direction?
we missed
Just
you.
go back out, just go back out the door, and just turn the middle, and down in that corner over there, the first door.
Perfect. Yeah, I tried stopping by for the 2 o'clock meeting and door was locked. No one was here. So.
Man,
Yeah, I don't know if I have that one anymore.
you need a list, buddy.
I
let me-
checked
let me give you a
online.
list.
I checked online.
You better get a printed one.
I have one of these too. I think it's in my probation paperwork. still, though.
Okay, you better put that. in
There
your
was
pocket.
I did find a couple of these were not accurate either.
Well, they're
Oh.
updated, that might be
Yeah,
updated.
hey,
Okay.
if they're not accurate, let press know.
It's like the whole fucking thing was about me, dude.
Yeah.
I was
know.
just coming here and I like got off at work at 3:30 trying to fucking race over here.
Yeah.
And I